Thank you. I had an Anne Marie Dawn here, but I guess I had an Anne Marie. One who's now a Roth. Okay, very good. We're going to begin. Two, Article 4. I'm sure you can look up on YouTube if you wanted more information, or you could contact your planning board representatives, including Glenn Koppelman, our chairman. So we'll proceed to Article 5. Behind the current fire station, and to authorize Act RSA 33, and to authorize the Board of Selectmen to issue and negotiate such bonds or notes and to remaining balance from the capital reserve for the future replacement, refurbishment, or upgrade of fire department buildings in 2004. This project will include architectural and engineering design work, building construction, site work, permit fees, and interior equipage. This will be a non-lapsing warrant article pursuant to RSA 32(7)(3), and the appropriation will not lapse unless rescinded until the completion of the project. This project is in the capital improvements program as approved by the planning board. Passage of this article requires a 3/5 ballot votes. There is no tax impact for 2020. The first bond payment will occur in 2021. Estimated tax impact for 2021 is $49 per thousand of assessed valuation, $127 per average house. 49 cents. Yeah, good thing. That's a big difference. Sorry, guys. That's at $260,000. If Articles 7, 8, and 9 are all passed, the amount to be bonded will be reduced to $3 million. But this amount bonded, the estimated tax impact for 2021 is 26 cents per $1,000 of assessed value, approximately $68 per average house assessed, or $260,000. And do I have a motion?
So moved.
And a second? And discussion? Mr. Furlong, we have a
Can't say you can't get around this body grid.
May focus on the front of
That's the closest microphone over here.
Yeah, they're all up here to my left. Chief Pellerin, Fire Chief Pellerin.
Good morning, and thank you for coming. Chief Graham Pellerin, Kingston Fire Department, resident of Kingston.
Are you going to speak right in the microphone?
So, pursuant 1948, Rockroom Inside was built and added on to in 1969. We have inadequate expansion possibilities at the current station. Lacks ADA compliance, the bathrooms, the entranceways. The bathrooms on the first floor don't have heat in them. They have a heat fan on a timer. So if you go over there right now, the front bathroom is probably about 30 degrees. Cost prohibitive to renovate. We looked at renovating and adding on to the current station that as it sits, and they said even if we put several $1 million into it, it just the building is so old and would need so much renovation it wouldn't be worth it. So obviously. Most of the commercial space that's being built up is in the north end of town. Trucks with a shorter wheelbase to fit in the station, and also have the ambulances reconfigured and their mirrors to fit the width of the doors. Lack of storage, just a few things. The present building for usually it's with correlated with like Seabrook Station and the nuclear plant if there's an issue, but for the residents of Kingston, there's also any special weather event, any Mother's Day flood, ice storm. That's where the selectmen come, that's where the highway department gets run out of, so that's inadequate as it sits now. So we have a full-time fire chief, one admin assistant, 4 firefighters. We did go to 24/7 coverage with per diem members, and we have 20 paid on-call members that respond from home. Current state Street and the Hunt Road Station, both are, over 50 years old. Apparatus, 3 engines, 1 tanker, 2 ambulances, forestry boat, air trailer. Annual call volume, approximately 1,300 emergency calls, 1,200 or so more permitting and phone calls and calls for service. So I'll let Mark Furlong take over.
Okay, thank you, Chief. This project actually began began studying the issue in 2001, so 19 years ago. There have been a number of efforts that you see up there on the slides to do different things, and finally the conclusion was reached several years ago that pursuing was the right direction to go. After defeated, then our committee, our first priority was finding a suitable site. We went through a lot of work for that and brought to the voters last year the purchase of some adjacent land and a land swap, which has now been completed in December. So now we have an enlarged lot to build a new building. That shows the lot. You can just move right along. This is a floor plan of the current concept. This is a little different layout than what we presented a year ago. We did a lot of work looking at the flow of the building, the size of the building. This was reduced from our original concept, which had 10 bays. This now has 8 bays. We also really took a critical look at all of the spaces that are needed, not only for now, but to support the department into the future, to bring the size of the building down pretty significantly from where we were a year ago. Next slide. So this is a rendering. The building, two sections. This is the view looking from the corner of Main Street and Rockrimmon Road. The front section would be the administrative side and meeting rooms, conference rooms, that sort of thing. That part of the building would be constructed with insulated, very energy efficient. The back side of the building would be housing the bays, and that's constructed with insulated steel, and then there is some brick on the facade to give it a little bit better look. The other the scale of the building, and the original concept had a peaked roof, and we were quite concerned as to how that might look sitting in the historic district. So we brought that down to a flat roof, and dropped the mass of the building down pretty significantly. Just a little bit of a discussion. The architect, we have a construction management firm join the project fairly early. We went through a competitive process to do that. They joined the project in October, and this was the same method that was used for building both our library and our new high school. And the construction management firm in the pre-construction phase helps us with developing the budget. They go out to the trade, give them some of the preliminary documents that we have at this point, and put that together with their own experience, because they're building projects all the time, and they're able to give us the budget for the building, and then the architects help us with the overall budget. So it breaks down into two different sections. The hard cost is actually the cost to build the building. The soft costs are everything else, which is furniture, fixtures, any other special things we need to do, pays for the fees for all the professionals like the architects and engineers that need to help us design the project. So this is the overall, how the budget is broken down. So the total, as stated in the warrant article, is $5,825,000. Of that, there's a couple things that I wanted to point out that are a little bit unusual expenses because of some things that we ran into. One is that the power lines at the current station are located on the south side of the building. For anybody who's probably been around town a long time, you may remember that before that station was built, Rockrimmon Road used to go on both sides of an old schoolhouse that was on that site. So that's why those power lines are there. They need to be relocated in order to build the building. And current estimate for that is about $118,000. The second thing is, any new building that we build in town is going to have sprinkler system for fire suppression. Well, we don't have a water system in Kingston, so we need to provide one. And this building and Nichols Library are tied into a system at the old high school. We struggled with whether we should try to do that or include something in our project. We had a meeting with the selectmen, I think it was in December, and they recommended that we put it into this project, and that would allow some future potential to connect this building and the Nichols to a town-owned system as opposed to one that looks like might be privately owned in the future. But that does come at a cost. It's about $318,000 to put in a tank and a pump and all the things that are necessary to do that. So that did drive, are clearly needed in order to get this project completed. If you can see on the right-hand side where the budget is, there's a lot. Zero. We worked really hard to make sure that this budget is as tight as we could get it. So just very quickly going over the finance, we have $230,000 remaining in the capital reserve fund. We did use some of that fund to purchase the land, so that will be used towards this project. Total project is $5,825,000, taking away the $230,000, then the amount to be bonded would be $5,595,602. Currently, bond rates are at pretty much a historic low, and working with the New Hampshire Bond Bank, they're advising us for estimation purposes, to use a 2.5% interest rate, which is definitely quite attractive. And using that, the tax impact, if we do the full bond amount, would be 49 cents per thousand. We calculated the average house based on assessed values to be $260,000. So that would equate to $127 on your tax bill. In the first year, which there's no bond payment due this year, the first bond payment would be February of 2021. And that's also the highest year. The first 2 years of the bond are the highest years of the payments. And if we're going to get into talking about Articles 7, 8, and 9, this shows what would happen if we approve those articles and use some of the infrastructure fund to reduce the amount to be bonded to $3 million. So it would drop the tax impact in that first year from 49 cents to 26 cents. Thank you.
Any questions? Further questions or comments? Yes, sir. Would you come to the microphone over here, please? Joe? Joe, I do need you at a microphone. You only have the one set up. If you'd like to speak, can you kind of start gravitating over there, please? State your name, Joseph.
Joe Edge, I live here in Kingston. My question is the interest rate. Is that locked in 20 years or is that variable?
You mean the interest rate on the bond? Is that the question you're asking?
Interest rate 2.5%. Is that locked in for 20 years or is that a variable bond?
Let's find out. Anything else? Mr. Furlong, right behind you, Joe. Mr. Furlong?
Yeah, the two. But it would bond, and I just saw in the paper last night that the Exeter Regional School District has a project that they just sold the bonds for. Those were sold at 2.15%. So the 2.5% could even go down, but we won't know that until the bonds are actually sold, which would be in July.
So once the bond is sold, it stays at the rate that it's obtained at. Once you obtain the bond, whatever that rate is the fixed rate.
Fixed rate for 20 years.
Yes. Further questions? Mr. St. Hilaire.
Folks, Rich St. Hilaire, road agent, been a firefighter for 44 years. Two things that I don't think program, and you guys did a good job presenting this, but the simple fact it's also the town's EOC. You got to understand what that's all about. I'm also one of the emergency operations managers. During any you don't come to the town hall, you don't go to see Chief Briggs at the police station, you don't come down the highway garage. The place you need to go or call out for help is the fire station, because that's where we'll all be. That's where your board of selectmen will be. That's where your town clerk will be. That's where everyone has to operate out of that, because that's just the way the system works. All decisions will be made. Basically, that's your de facto town hall during a major disaster. We've done it before, we'll do it again. That being said, that added quite a bit of cost to this project. Standards to meet federal guidelines. So I don't have the real number, but it's somewhere around $500,000 of added cost between the makeup air, separating the heating system, everything else that has to go into that building, including the sizing of the generator and the backup power, so that it's no matter what happens, that building is up and running, unless, of course, that building gets blown down or blown up. So that's one thing. That's part of the reason why that number is so high, but that's reality. The other thing is I'm going to address needs for the building. Like I said, I've been on the department for 44 years. I remember when the addition on Rocket Monroe was new and the police station was upstairs. And then finally they got their own building and we got to use the whole building. That was great. The building is inadequate. I don't think we put limiting factors in the existing building that need to be addressed. A lot of you know my situation with pancreatic cancer. Just Google firefighter, pancreatic cancer, and you'll be amazed, okay? Just being exposed to the carcinogens, and then for the last 44 years not being able to get back, like we know today, you need to get your firefighters, get the clothes off them as soon as they can, as soon as they get out of the fire, on scene. We're stripping people down, getting them out of that contaminated gear, because as you're sweating and whatnot, that stuff, those carcinogens are getting into your pores of your skin. The sooner you can get firefighters back to the station in a quick decon shower. Well, you can't do that in your existing building. You just can't do it. We got one. I barely fit in the shower myself. Well, a year ago I barely fit in, a little skinnier now, but
You're looking good.
you know, so there is a critical need. You get firefighter safety issues. It's not make-believe. Like I say, Google pancreatic cancer and firefighters and see what you see.
Thank you, Mr. St. Hilaire. Further comments or questions in Article 5? Yes, Mrs. Faulkner.
First up, so it's time that this start to move forward. The questions I have is at the bond hearing, there was discussion about how much money might be interest within the infrastructure fund, how much may or may not be able to be used to offset the cost of the bond. At the time, those questions hadn't been answered yet, and I just didn't know if anybody had any updated information for the public.
Further comments? Mr. Heights?
I'll try. So I hope. Maybe.
Mr. Maxwell,
I'm Brad Maxwell, Chairman of the Trustees of the Trust Fund.
right in the microphone, Brad.
The interest only that I was talking about applies only to private money, scholarships and that type of thing. And that's what we're restricted to in private fund, but the public money, capital reserve fund, all of it can be spent with a vote of the town.
Thank you, Mr. Maxwell. Mrs. Faulkner?
Has there been any discussion about?
Thank you. Further comments or questions?
Want me to respond to that? Okay.
If you'd like to, yes. Can't make you.
Go ahead, go for it.
Mr. Lights.
Discussion has really taken that and the reason being is because I think it's the next 3 articles about taking approximately 2, earmarking it at the fire department. The route the board decided to go was that if we left the money in the fund and borrowed at the and utilize that money within our authority to, when the bond in additional taxes, which we have a couple of different formulas there, but I think anywhere from 100 on the $127 to $147 per year.
Thank you. Mr. St. James?
snafu last year with the selection of land. Everyone said they supported the fire department. Took that, went back, worked diligently this year to come up with a land, and they were against crunch time for bonding, for estimate numbers, construction, finding the construction manager, and finding an architect and everything else. With that being said, the selectmen unanimously do agree that there is a need for a fire station and support Article 5, the bonding. The next question comes down to what to do with the infrastructure fund. And that's where the selectmen did have a different of opinion. And, you know, everyone can speak to if they want. Ultimately, the selectmen thought the best alternative was to present warrant articles 5, it stands alone, at the full bonding, then 7, 8, and 9, so that it allows the people to understand and the opportunity to buy down the bond should they choose to, because we did have a difference of opinion on the Board of Selectmen. What was the majority? We thought if we took $2.6 million out of the infrastructure, it would buy the bond down to $4 million. And then, I mean, $3 million, my bad, $3 million. And then we would reestablish the infrastructure fund as it was originally intended, where it could earn interest and everything else. So not burn it down. We figured a half amount would be reasonable. It would continue to earn interest. But again, we wanted to present that to the townspeople as an option. It does seem a little confusion. And we had some issues with the DRA trying to tell us how we could write the bond article, the warrant articles and everything else. But we think the intent is clear. And we'll talk about them individually as they go, but that's how the board is. We're a little bit split, so hopefully that answers Ms. Faulkner's questions as far as what we're looking at, just taking the interest or buying down the bond as much as possible. But the selectmen do agree the fire station is needed, and we hope the townspeople support that.
Mr. Heights?
Just one quick comment on the need. In the past approximately year, there has been two major issues that have increased the need to replace that fire department. Number one is the potential disposal of the property, which was the former high school. Because our fire suppression system is located there, there's a tank, we're in conjunction with the school, and there's a, because it doesn't have any in this building, we don't have it over there, and if we chose to tie into the fire department, we wouldn't have it there. That's why we made the conscious decision to include the museum at the old library. So that was one issue. The second issue, which has come up over the last year, volunteerism has been declining year after year after year for the past. Unfortunately, our fire department, everybody's lives are busier now. Everybody's trying to make a living. Can't give the time that they could. By being a member of the fire department. At one time, I think we were up to somewhere in the vicinity of 50 volunteers on the fire department. Now I believe we're down to 20. So what has happened is, over the past year, there's been an issue getting an ambulance community. The new to address that, right now what we're doing is we have a they come in and they stay at the fire station overnight with one of our, and that way there we can respond to that ambulance now 24 hours a day. That has created an issue with the fire department. Right now, I think one of the main reasons it was granted was because they're aware that we're trying to address the issue with a new fire station, which that issue as far as fire suppression for people that are staying overnight at the fire station. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Heights. Further comments? Okay. Then I assume that we're going to move that article onto the ballot for approval on March 10th. Do I have a motion? Well, we don't need to have, let me put it this way. Unless there's no objection, we don't have to move on. I'll just move it to the ballot once we're done speaking on it. If there's no objection, I will do it that way rather than motions every time. Okay? But I know Fire Chief, Chief Pellerin wants to make a motion to restrict reconsideration on Article 5.
I would like to make just that motion to restrict further consideration after this is closed.
And it's second, moved and second to restrict consideration. What that is that now that we've finished discussing the article, it cannot be brought up anytime else today. It goes right to the ballot. All those in favor of restricting consideration, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. No. The ayes have it, and this will move forward to the ballot as printed. Okay, Article 6 is our budget. Shall the town of Kingston raise and appropriate as an operating budget, not including appropriations by special warrant articles and other appropriations voted separately, the amount set forth on the budget posted with the warrant, or as amended by vote of the first session for the purposes set forth therein, $5,927,089, which is the same as last year with certain adjustments required by previous town action of the town of Kingston or by law, or the governing body may hold one special meeting in accordance with RSA 4013, 10, and 16 to take up the issue of a revised operating budget only. Do I have a motion in Article 6? And a second?
Second.
Thank you. Discussion on the budget. Questions? Comments? Oh, sorry, Mr. St. James.
Board of Selectmen would like to address that it is a 6% increase over last year. We do acknowledge that and realize that's hard for the taxpayers. We just want the people to understand where that increase is coming from. One, our insurance rates for our employees went up 9%. That's one of the biggest costs. The other thing is this allows the town to continue working on the PFOA situation surrounding the Plains, Rock River Road, Main Street, and all those areas. We don't know what's going to happen with that, but we're budgeted properly for it, and we're hoping for the best results for the taxpayers, the residents in that area, and the town. Another thing is the fire department. Employees, but that would offset the revenues because the billing's going to change, and they'll be at a charge at a higher rate for insurance companies. And then the only other thing is the town of Kingston's having a hard time retaining employees. We're losing them to other towns, so this allows money for the town of Kingston to pay the employees a wage that allow them to stay here versus wage shopping everywhere else and leaving after we train them. So those are some of the major increases to the budget, and wanted people to know about it.
Thank you. Further comments or questions on the budget as proposed? Then we'll move the budget onto the ballot for March 10th as printed. Article 7, and Article 7, 8, and 9 are all related to the fire station and withdrawing money. Just 2011 Town of Kingston Infrastructure Fund for the purpose of withdrawing $2,595,602 from the principal balance of $5,430,435 of the infrastructure fund to apply towards the construction of a new fire station in accordance with Article 8 to reduce the amount to be raised through the sale of bonds, and reestablishing a fund with a remaining balance of $2,834,833 in accordance with Article 9. This warrant article is contingent on the passage of Article 5, Article 8, and 9. If Article 5, construction and bonding of new fire station, Article 8, allocation of the proceeds from the revoked fund to reduce the amount bonded, and Article 9, establishment of the 2020 infrastructure fund, all do not pass, this warrant article becomes moot and has no effect. This article shall have no tax impact. We know a lawyer wrote this. Sorry, Rick. That is a mouthful. Okay, do I have a motion? Say yes, Mr. St. James, and a second. Thank you. Discussion on Article 7. Chief Pellerin.
So I'll keep it brief because you have two more articles. 8 and 9, and then I'll speak more to them after those two. But I ask for your support. It's definitely confusing how it's worded, but it's the same way that the DRA had us write them years ago when we pulled money out for the library.
Further discussion? Mr. Maxwell? And after we've read down to number 9, I'll let you speak to all three as a collectively if you'd like, because I think it's important you do so. Mr. Maxwell?
As I mentioned before, I spoke to the DRA about this whole bonding and the infrastructure fund, and they said
Thank you, Mr. Maxwell. Further comments on Article 7? Then we'll move that onto the ballot on March 10th. I'm sorry, I can't, the light blocked out your light shirt. Mr. St. James.
Madam Chair. What I'd like to do first is acknowledge that the town has $5.4 million sitting in an infrastructure fund. The reason that money is there right now is because of the man sitting to the left of me. I would like to take a second and thank Chairman Mark Heitz. This will be his last deliberative session. He had the foresight back in the late 90s with the dump closing and realizing the needs of the town to come up with this infrastructure fund. With that money, we have been able to build a highway garage and a brand new library. So if I can ask everyone for a round of applause to Mark Heitz. Equate that fund to your grandmother's living room couch. You can look at it, but you can't touch it, apparently. There is contention on the Board of Selectmen on what to do with that fund. We know there is a need for the fire station. We have a fund set up for infrastructure. The fire station is infrastructure. We want that to continue for future generations, but we want to use some of that money to buy down the bond. It was very confusing going to the DRA to figure out how to do these warrant articles. Yes, they did say we could eliminate 8 and 9 and do everything in one, but then it'd be even more confusion for the people that aren't here today or aren't watching on TV. We think it's quite clear. Article 7 dissolves the trust fund. It's a revocable trust, so you have to end it. Article 8 allows us to take $2.6 million out of it to buy down the bond. And that's the will of it's not the will of the selectmen, it's up to the taxpayers if they want to do that. And then Article 9 reestablishes that fund with the existing money the exact same way it was, so that if anyone wanted to spend the money, it would have to come to a town vote as well. Again, there's some discussion on the Board of Selectmen. It's a 3-2 on doing these 3 warrant articles. We hope the townspeople support it and support the fire station, but that's why it's separated into 3. We feel we're quite clear, and we're telling the townspeople exactly what we're looking to do. Hope everyone supports all 3 of them.
Thank you, Mr. St. Mr. Coon.
All right, well, I won't let my on this because I tend to make financial decisions for the town as I would for my own business. And the way I look at it with my own business, the math never lies. Plug it into your phone. Let's just assume that we were making 5% on $4 million. That's $200,000 a year. Multiply that by 20, that's $4 million. We could essentially have this fire station paid for free and clear if we structured it properly, which is why I oppose this. I felt, as Mr. Heitz does, that there are better ways to spend this money. It makes everybody feel good that we just dropped $2.6 million and got the initial cost down, but at the end of that 20 years, we'll still have $4 million plus left in an account, and the fire station will be paid for, which is why I opposed it.
Mr. Heights?
My math's a little different than Phil's. Our trustee just told us the fund was generated at this point 18%, but a realistic average is 7%. If you take the 5.4 million at 7% annually, you're going to get pretty close to $400,000. And other than maybe in the first year or two, that will cover the bond. So if every year the selectmen vote to put that money against that bond, we're still going to have approximately $5.4 million. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Heights. Further comments? Mrs. Seer? Yep.
At some past select...
State your full name, though, please. Yeah.
Mary Sear. At some past selectmen's meetings, there was discussion about some other capital improvement projects that are on the horizon, things for which the select board might decide or need to tap that fund. Could you tell the other folks here what other things? I mean, we've got a brand new library, we've got a relatively, retrofitted police station that, talk about town hall and the other buildings that might need to tap into that fund. I know you want to keep it, it sounds, as a principal amount so that you can use the interest for those projects. But give the electorate a better idea of what's going on with town properties. Do you have a capital improvement plan that talks about those?
Mr. Heights?
Well, I'm not sure what capital improvement programs you're talking about, but we don't, well, I'll speak for myself and any member of the board jump right in. We've addressed the highway department with a new building. It's going to take care of them, and Rich can challenge me if I'm not giving the right information, but I think that's going to take care of the highway department for the foreseeable future. The police department, but we don't see any major renovations there. This would take care of the fire department. We've got a relatively new library. As far as the town hall goes, there's no foreseeable plans or in the future that we would need to replace this. I don't think we anticipate any major infrastructure improvement in the foreseeable future. And the fire station, by the way, that building, it's a lot of money, don't get me wrong, but it's designed to address the needs, the foreseeable future for 50 years, okay? So we don't, so we're not down the road. That are going to need to be done in the future, that money would be needed for.
Mr. St. James?
Didn't feel it was necessary to leave $4 million in an infrastructure fund. But again, the voters will have all the information in front of them. You can have you can bond it completely, and you saw that your tax impact is 49 cents per thousand. Or you can allow the selectmen to do this, and then you're buying down, the tax rate is at 26 cents per thousand. We thought it was reasonable because otherwise, if we don't take it, you're going to be paying more taxes anyway. So that's what the idea of the infrastructure fund was.
Thank you. Mr. Coombs? I'm sorry, I'll get to Mr. Murphy in a minute.
So as everybody's touched on, there isn't major things planned, but I don't think anyone whose car's transmission is blown out or their engine has been like, boy, I wish I took that trip to Florida instead of saving some money in the bank. There's potentially the town should have to take care of. Anything can happen, and I think if we structure this right, we can get the fire station paid for and still have money to do other things, whatever they may be they in the capital improvement. So.
Thank you. Mr. Murphy, another member of our budget committee who came in. Murray, I'm sorry.
Sean Murray, yep. Just one question about this fund, the amount of interest or gain that happened. 19% is obviously huge, right? Not normal. How much money can it lose each year? We're about 10 years into a bull run. That's why I ask. I mean, you're saying...
We'll see if we can get that answer for you.
How much can we lose?
Maybe Brad wants to speak to that. That's why I say, you know, the 18%, that's a windfall when you're getting that.
You don't get 18% returns without a risk of losing.
Average return over 10 to 15 years.
Right. Right. So if the 10 years run at this point, we do need money now. I'm not saying, I mean, if I could see the theory, if, hey, 10 years from now we want to build a fire station, yeah, leave the money there. But to do it right now, taking the money out at 10 years towards 10 years of a bull run, that's a big deal. You could easily end up on the other side of the coin with this money, not having 5% return. If you start taking this money out each year to pay down for whatever interest there is on the fire department, we need the money out. Is that the idea? We're going to take the money out each year with your plan? I mean, not being voted.
Mr. Murray, this is not a discussion here. You need to have the question and see if we get an answer for you. I can't guarantee that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Just to speak to that, that's why I go to the 7% average, recognizing there are highs and lows. When you're, you know, if you see your investments going down substantially, then you get out of those funds. And that's why I say 10 to 15 year average is a 7% return. The interest on the money, it would generate at the 5.4 million at 7% average. It will generate substantially more at 18, substantially less at 2. But as an average of 7, that would give you a return of approximately $400,000. I think it's just shy of $400,000, and that is really close to the maximum cost of the highest bond payment.
Thank you. Mrs. Faulkner?
First, I want to say that when this fund was established, one of the things that was discussed that it could be used for in the future was for a fire station. The other thing is that while I understand everybody talking about their personal finances, that's not how taxation works. Taxation is supposed to be taken care of by the current people who are paying the taxes. And unless, so again, I'm in favor of these articles. Part of this is to allow the taxpayer to know how much it's going to cost them if they vote for something. I appreciate the fact that the Board of Selectmen is saying that possible interest could pay for the bond in the future, but they're not committing to it. So your current taxpayer is going to take a guess as to how much this may cost them. If the board to do, but we're still going to have $2 million in a fund that will help to pay for any future items. If the Board of Selectmen find that there are future items that they think they're going to have to pay for in the future, that's what Capital Reserves Fund is for. And then the taxpayers can decide whether they agree with that project and whether they want to fund that Capital Reserve Fund. At this point, we have an infrastructure that has a significant amount of money in it that we're going to keep at least half of it to let the taxpayers know we're only charging you what we need to, still keep a healthy balance, but we're not going to hit you with the whole thing on the idea that we may pay for this with our interest. I don't think that's a responsible way to behave to your taxpayers.
Thank you. Further discussion on Article 7? If not, I'll move Article... Yes, sir, do you want to speak to Article 7? State your name, please.
I'm Jim Sorrell from over by the lake. You know, where this doesn't require a response. It's a question in my mind and a reminder that while we need the physical infrastructure, I think we also need a balance between the physical and the human infrastructure. Rich hinted at it. So just food for thought for the future. And if somebody wants to respond to what we're doing, we responded by increasing our other people's wages. I don't know whether it's $15 an hour yet, but that was a human response and also a business response. And also, while I'm here, I would like to give all of our firefighters who've sacrificed so much for us a hand.
Is there any further discussion on Article 7? If not, then Article 7 will be moved to the ballot on March 10th as presented. Article 8, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $2,595,602 for the purpose of constructing a new fire station in accordance with Article 5. Such sum to come from the remaining balance of the infrastructure fund, which was revoked in Article 7 to reduce the amount to be raised through the sale of bonds to $3 million. This warrant article is contingent on the passage of Article 5, 7, and 9, and if any of Article 5, 7, and 9 do not pass, construction and bonding a new fire station, infrastructure fund. Infrastructure fund. This warrant article becomes moot and has no effect. In order for the town to take advantage of the current infrastructure fund, Articles 7, 8, and 9 all must pass. This article shall have no tax impact. Do I have a motion? Please, somebody say yes. Chief, thank you. Second? Second. Discussion. Okay. There being none, Article 8 will move on to the ballot March 10th as printed. Article 9. I think I need a rule. To see if the town will vote to create a general trust fund under the provisions of RSA 3119A2 to be known as the 2020 Town of Kingston Infrastructure Fund for the purpose of building, expanding, improving, and maintaining town-owned structures and improvements, and to raise and appropriate the sum of $2,834,833. Such sum to come from the remaining balance of the infrastructure fund, which was revoked in Article 7, and no amount to be raised by taxation. The amount of $2,834,833 shall remain in trust and will not be invaded. Only monies earned through investment, including but not limited to interest and dividends, and the interest and dividend money earned on the Town of Kingston Infrastructure Development, Improvement, and Maintenance Fund as of December 31st, 2019, including any interest accumulated through March 2nd, 2020, will be available to support the purpose of the trust fund. The selectmen are appointed agents to expend earnings of the trust fund for the purpose of the trust after a posted public hearing. The intent of this article is to create a revocable trust generating annual earnings for the benefit of the town in perpetuity. This warrant article is contingent on the passage of Article 5, 7, and 8. If any of Article 5, Article 7, and 9 do not pass, construction, bonding of the fire station, revocation of the current infrastructure fund, or allocation of proceeds from the revoked fund to reduce amount bonded, this warrant article becomes moot and has no effect. Yay. Do I have a motion in Article 9? In a second. Thank you. Discussion on Article 9. Yes, sir, Chief Pellerin.
Obviously, there's been a lot of discussion just with Article 7, so I don't want to bore you with any more. Basically, what we did here is we contacted DRA through selectmen, and they basically had us change the library to fire station. So this is pretty much what was on the article several years ago for the library. So bottom line, 7, 8, and 9 must pass in order to reduce the bond amount to $3 million. So I ask for your support.
Thank you, Chief. Further discussion on Article 9? Mr. Coombs?
I think it's just a philosophical difference on how we pay for it. I absolutely support the fire station going through, so there's two different ways the voters can handle it, but more than anything, vote how you want on this, but I think the fire station should be voted on. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Coombs. Further discussion on Article 9, and that also will be moved onto the ballot for March 10th. Okay. I understand that we have a motion to consider an article out of order. Chief Briggs?
I would ask you to take Article 28 out of order.
The chief there's a motion on the floor to consider Article 28 at this time. Do I have a second? Second. The purpose being that we have a guest that would like to speak to that. And I'm assuming there's no objection. Let me read Article, well, let's vote on whether or not we're going to take it out of order. All those in favor of taking Article 28 out of order, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. The ayes have it, and we will consider Article 28 at this time. It states, on particular 25, the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $6,333, $1 per person, based on the population numbers provided in the 2017 Census American Community Survey, to support the substance misuse prevention, suicide prevention, and community wellness services of the SOROC Coalition for Healthy Youth. SOROC's work promotes wellness and nurtures resiliency for the children, youth, and families of Kingston, as well as surrounding communities. SOROC works through coordinating community education, programming, and resources, and collaborating with federal and state agencies to help direct additional resources to the towns they serve. Do I have a motion? And a second? Second. Okay, discussion. And if there is a member, a representative of SOROC is here, she is not a resident of the community, but would like to speak. Is there any objection to that? Young lady, come to the microphone and please state your name.
Help from our towns. We have been traditionally federally funded, so we haven't had to burden our towns with assistance. This grant that we've received for the past 10 or 11 years, it's designed for you eventually to turn ownership of prevention over to your community. And we're at the end of that 10-year cycle, so that's the process we're following. We serve the towns of Atkinson, Danville, Hampstead, Kingston, Newton, Plastow, and Sandown, and Fremont as well. And we're on as one, primarily with selectmen support. So just to give people an idea of some of the things that we do in the community, we've partnered with Drugs Are Dangerous and Camp Lincoln to bring prevention to all of the 5th grade students in the area for Kingston and Newton, and we've recently added Fremont, so that these kids and parents can start making community connections earlier on. Relationship building is a huge protective factor for both substance misuse prevention and mental health. In that program, we have the parents all morning where the kids are bonding together at Camp Lincoln, and then the afternoon, parents and students get together and are all together at Camp Lincoln. So that's a partnership with Drugs Are Dangerous. We have, for grandparents and family caregivers, we have support groups for people raising the children of their addicted children or family members. We've done college transition work. We have done multiple partnerships with the Austin 17 House, including first responder resiliency training for our police, fire, and EMTs, suicide prevention trainings for the community. We've had many youth group partnerships with the Kingston Lions and Austin 17. We've had parenting workshops, community forums. We collaborate with our first responders, especially the police, around things like underage drinking. We run opioid safety campaigns for the hospitals and medical providers, and we also have recovery-friendly workplace trainings through our partnership with the Plastow Area Commerce Exchange. So if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Okay, thank you. Further discussion? Chip, Mr. Hart?
Yes, I think on this,
You will do that after the meeting, Chuck.
really?
You won't do it right here now, okay?
No?
No, okay.
No, do it after.
Not part of the deliberative session.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions on Article 28? Okay, yep. Mrs. Mahoney?
Tammy Mahoney.
Yeah, right into it, Tammy, thank you.
I am a member of the Sanborn School Board. As a citizen, I do support this. I think it's really important. The school has done support.
Thank you, Mrs. Mahoney.
Quickly mention that the school has been amazing in being supportive with in-kind services in the way of office space. So we've donated office space in the school, so they are supporting us as well.
Oh, that school is still us. Thank you. Any other comments on 28? If not, that will move forward onto the ballot as printed. Thank you, ma'am. Okay, let's go back to Article N. Yep. See if the town will vote to authorize the tax collector to allow a 1.5% deduction for property tax when payment is made prior to the due date. It is the responsibility of the taxpayer to take the deduction. Deductions not taken by the taxpayer on or before the due date will not be refunded. A majority vote is required. Do I have a motion? Please. In a second. Okay, thank you. Discussion on Article 10. Chief? Oh, no, Mr. James, go ahead. Make it brief.
The townspeople have historically asked is that if you want to take the deduction, the 1.5% deduction on your taxes, that you notify, that you keep track of it and you catch it before the deadline, because that's the point that some people get bid on. Their mortgage company pays the taxes, and then they come over after in January and they're looking for checks. So just let the voters know, if you do want to take that deduction, you have to be in touch with your mortgage company and request it before the due date of your taxes.
Thank you, Mr. St. James. Further discussion on Article 10? Okay, we'll move forward. Yes, Mr. Murray?
One thing on this is I'd like to ask if they could make this be something that just happens. We don't have to talk about it every year. And is it not something, Kevin, what did you find out about that?
Okay, I'll get that answer for you, Mr. St. James.
The DR reason it's there.
Thank you.
It's Kingston's favorite wine. Thank you, Mr. St. James. Okay, if there's no further discussion, Article 10 will move on to the ballot as printed. Article 11, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $50,000 to be placed in the previously established Buildings Maintenance Capital Reserve Fund. Majority vote required. Mr. St. James. St. Hilaire, I'm sorry. St. Hilaire.
How much is in there now?
Number 11.
I'm without words right now, Ally. This is the first cap reserve fund we're talking about, so capital reserve funds were set up. This one was set up in the early 90s, I believe. Some of them were set up in the 80s. Purpose for cap reserve fund is to make your tax rates more steady. It forced the fire department, the highway department, and this is a building department one, which is mine also, to look ahead, see what funding issues are going to come up. And basically, this is a bank account. You put a little bit of money in every year so that when you have a big expense, you folks don't see that spike in your taxes. And your taxes aren't going up and down like that. They're always going up. Hate to say that, but they are. It's always been funded by the voters, and I think it's worthwhile and good way to do things. So I just rise here asking for your support. This is, are there specific projects this year? There are things we're going to be doing. There's the the old Nichols building, the old library. Further on, you'll see there's a warrant article for that. We're not actually funding it through that warrant article. That'll be funded through this fund that's already been created. So it's $50,000. We'd like to see you put into it this year, and hopefully you all support it.
Thank you, Mr. St. Hilaire. Any other questions or comments on Article 11? There being none, it'll move forward onto the ballot on March 10th. Article 12, to see the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $100,000 to be placed in the previously established Highway Department Equipment Capital Reserve Fund. Majority vote is required. A motion, Mr. St. Hilaire, and a second. Someone, yeah, thank you. Go ahead, Mr. St. Hilaire.
This is for the Highway Department. I'm in need of presently there's about, I say 10,000, there might be as much as $15,000 in this fund. We bought a truck, basically used up most of the money in it. We need to start replenishing it. You've seen this as low as $60,000. This is the first time I've hit the $100,000 mark. Out of this fund, I need to now start buying vehicles for building maintenance. Building maintenance is presently operating, well, we always take the hand-me-downs, but we had an old fire truck that we used for about 10 years. It's now out of service. We had 10 more years out of it. Needs a motor job. It's a 1990. It's not worth it. The newest vehicle we have on that department's a 2006, and the oldest is, I believe, an 85 military truck, which Chief Briggs got for us. Needs to be $100,000 so we can start, so we can pay for the vehicle we need and start building, because within 2 years we're going to have another major expense with a $200,000 big plow truck that'll need to be replaced. So hopefully you'll support it, folks. Any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Thank you. Further comments on Article 12? There being none, Article 12 will move on to the March 10th ballot as printed. Article 13, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $137,800 for the masonry work at the Nichols Memorial Building and authorize the withdrawal of $137,800 from the Building Maintenance Capital Reserve Fund created for that purpose. Recommendations required and a majority vote also required. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
And a second? Okay, discussion on Article 13, Mr. St. Hilaire.
So, and what it costs to maintain some of these old buildings. The money's available, so if you vote for this, it's really not going to, you're not going to pay more taxes this year. The money already exists in a fund. What the selectmen and I discussed is something like this, major purchases, major expenses that aren't necessarily emergency expenses. We want to bring it before the voters so that they understand what these things cost. It's like last year when I wanted to buy a chipper. I didn't need to put the warrant article in. The money existed in the cap reserve fund, but we wanted to make, where it was a new purchase, we wanted the people to understand it was a new purchase. We're just trying to bring it to light so there's no smoke and mirrors, nothing hidden. That's what it cost. And someone's going to ask, is there going to be more expenses on this building? Of course there is. It's a 120-year-old building that is always going to need work done, whether it be the stained glass windows that need to be reworked or the 130-year-old windows that need to be reworked. It's always going to be, but the selectmen and I both agree, and Budget Committee, everyone supports this, but we just want to bring it forward to the voters. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. St. Hilaire. Mrs. Powers, did you want to speak?
Hello, Debbie Powers, Heritage Commission Chair and Envision Kingston Chair. We, of course, support this. Understand why the selectmen and Mr. St. Hilaire believe that this should go to the voters. We like the voters to also see what's going on and the keeping to the Heritage Commission's goal of using and keeping our buildings. This is also one of the buildings that is especially highlighted in the Envision Kingston report that was done in 2016. This was a Plan New Hampshire charrette that said the importance of our historic buildings in both the economic and the enjoyment factor of the residents of Kingston. So please support this warrant article. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Powers. Any other comments on Article 13? Mrs. Seer?
Mary Seer. It's my understanding that the former Nichols Library is now a museum, and it's open one day a week for 3 hours. I just want people to understand that, you know, you talk about the enjoyment of the building. It's really, people need to have an aesthetic appreciation in the historic preservation in order to consider whether they want to withdraw those funds for this purpose. Again, I understand there's no tax impact, the money's in the capital reserve fund, but you need to look at the opportunity cost and look at the entire picture of using those funds for this purpose, or do you want to save it for something else down the road? I just want to make that clear, that, you know, that's a lot of money, $184,000 to repoint stones.
$137,000. Okay, thank you. Further comments on Article 13? Mr. St. James, sorry.
Madam Moderator, I'd like to make an amendment make a motion for an amendment to the article.
Yep.
I'd like to add the language, if this article passes, there will be no tax impact.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to add an amendment to the Article 13 so that it reads at the end, if this article passes, there will be no tax impact. Is that correct? Discussion on the amendment. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. The ayes have it, and Article 13 has been duly amended. Any other comments or questions on Article 13? If not, it will be moved onto the ballot on March 10th as amended. Article 14, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $85,000 to be placed in the previously established fire apparatus replacement capital reserve fund. A majority vote is required. Do I have a motion? And then the chief has moved it. Thank you, Mr. St. Hilaire. Discussion, Mr. Chief Pellerin.
So as Mr. St. Hilaire had so I ask for your support. This has been supported over the years. Like Mr. St. Hilaire, the apparatus and trucks and everything that we need to buy to keep everybody safe and plow the roads aren't getting cheaper. I felt that it wouldn't be fair to the taxpayers to take this out, even though we're going for a new building, because then that would just affect your taxes years to come. So please support your.
Thank you, Chief. Further comment or questions on Article 14? Okay, if not, Article 14 will be moved under the ballot for March 10th as printed. Article 15, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $29,106 for the purpose of purchasing acoustical panels for the town hall meeting room. A majority vote is required. Do I have a motion? And a second? Okay, discussion. Mr. St. James.
As long as I've been in this town and as selectman, there's always been issues in this town hall hearing people speak, whether they're speaking into the microphone or not. Even if you're at home watching a selectmen's meeting or planning board meeting or anything else, people have a hard time hearing. Selectman Briggs had a company come in and do an evaluation of the town hall. The reverberation rate is at 7 seconds throughout this building. With these acoustical tiles, it'll bring the reverb rate down to 1 second, which would improve the sound quality in this room. We can address other things as we go forward as far as speakers and microphones and everything else, but that is the biggest thing right now. We only got we got an estimate, and they gave us up to $49,000 to bring the reverb rate down to a half a second, but we thought this was the best option. We would tiles ourselves without changing the integrity of this building. They would hang down from the ceiling to capture the sound. We hope the voters do support it, and it'll make it a long way towards improving the sound in this building. Everything, the way this building was designed, it was for people to be up on the stage projecting out. That doesn't happen anymore. We're all down on the same level, and it would help a lot. So we hope the voters support it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. St. James. Is there further discussion on Article 15? And Article 15 will be moved forward on the March 10th ballot as printed. Article 16, see if the town will vote to discontinue the following capital reserve fund 325th anniversary. Said fund and accumulated interest to date of withdrawal are to be transferred to the municipality's general fund. Do I have a motion? So moved. In a second? Thank you. Discussion on Article 16.
Just briefly, we've had the 325th, so it doesn't make any sense to leave money in a fund that can be used for the 325th since we already have it. The next, I believe it's 3 articles. They're put in there to address that issue and reestablish a fund. You'll see down in the later articles for the 350. Okay, so that's to discontinue a fund that has no purpose at this point.
Thank you. Further comments on Article 16? There being none, Article 16 will move on to the ballot as printed. Article 17, to see if the town will vote to discontinue the following capital reserve fund annual celebration. Said fund and accumulated interest to date of withdrawal are to be transferred to the municipality's general fund. Do I have a motion? And a second? Second. Thank you. Discussion on Article 17? There being none, that too shall be moved forward onto the March 10th ballot as printed. And number 18, to see if the town will vote to establish a 350th anniversary capital reserve fund under the provisions of RSA 35-1 for the town's future 350th celebration, and to raise and appropriate the sum of $70,000 to be placed in this fund, with this amount to come from the Kingston Day Special Revenue Fund. Further, to name the Board of Selectmen as agents to expend. Do I have a motion? In a second? Yep, Mrs. Fiddler. Discussion on Article 18. Yes, Mrs. Faulkner.
Can I just speak loud? I just wondered if the selectmen thought that they should put that same notation on this, that no, this isn't going to do the thing with taxes that you mentioned on the previous fund. This isn't raising and appropriating taxes. Is this
Mrs. Faulkner, you really?
Understanding with this warrant article that it's not raising and appropriating taxes as well. So I didn't know if the Board of Selectmen wanted to make that same recommendation to add that language to this article.
We'll see if they want to do that. Thank you. Mr. St. James.
Madam Moderator, I would like to make a motion.
Yes, sir.
To add, should actually Articles 16, 17, and 18 pass, this will have no tax impact.
So you want to amend Article 18 to say if Article 16, 17, and 18 pass. Well, those are the three into this.
15, 17, and 18.
If Article 16, 17, 18 pass, there will be no tax impact.
Correct.
Okay. And it's an amendment to Article 18, and it's been moved and seconded? Yes. Right. Discussion on the amendment? Not on the amendment. Oh, not on the amendment, okay. All those in favor of amending Article 18 by adding there will be no tax impact if Article 16, 17, 18 pass, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Ayes have it. Discussion on the article as amended.
I have one question. In Article 16, we mentioned the funds moved to the municipality's general fund, but in number 18, we say the funds are going to come from the Kingston Days Special Fund.
I have no answer. I do what I'm told here.
Selectmen, is that right?
Because otherwise you would go in the unanticipated revenue, we wouldn't be able to reestablish the fund, so that's why it's worded that way.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Further discussion on Article 18 as amended? Okay, if not, then I assume that Article 18 will go on the ballot on March 10th as amended. Article 19, and I'll read this for you, Mark, and then I'll let you, I need to speak to this one. See if the town will vote to adopt the community revitalization tax relief incentive outlined in New Hampshire RSA 79E of state law, and to designate Historic District 1, HD1, as meeting the standards for an eligible district as set forth in New Hampshire RSA 79E2. If adopted, the Board of Selectmen shall have the option of granting temporary property assessment relief to encourage substantial reinvestment in qualifying structures. The goal is to promote rehabilitation of underutilized buildings in the town's village center, thereby contributing to a strong local economy and smart, sustainable growth. And I would like to speak to this personally, and so Mr. Heights is going to come forward.
Wow, some real power.
One way over here.
Mr. Heights.
I'm here to speak in support of passage of Article 79E, which would give the town of Kingston the flexibility to grant some tax relief, short-term tax relief, to potential developers in our historic district. You all know about what's happening with the seminary building. We have finally found a buyer, and one that's very reputable and will be working hard to maintain the integrity of the building and its exterior. What he does on the inside is a whole nother ballgame. He is looking also for relief for a short period of time to control the growth of his taxes while he's doing the renovations. We expect that he's going to put in between $6 and $10 million in the seminary property. What RSA 79E does, for example, with the seminary, if that property sells, the town will assess it at current value in its current condition. And assuming it comes in, let's say, at $400,000 or $500,000, the developer will be paying taxes on that $400,000 or $500,000, whatever the current assessed value is in the current condition. And that, should the selectmen agree, and it would be up to the Board of Selectmen, I'm sure they're probably going to put a Heritage Commission or some group to filter applications to move forward. Should they agree with the developer to give relief while the developer is improving the property, it might be anywhere from 3 to up to as much as 13 years, but it's usually 1 to 5 years, where they don't have any increase in their base taxes for a predetermined period of time negotiated with the Board of Selectmen. That gives the developer obviously time to do the improvements and recoup some of his or her losses, as the case may be, for the project. It's not the only project that has the potential. The Kingston Village Store building is another building that has that potential. It's not for someone that wants to change the house in Historic District 1 that wants to change the siding, because the minimum cost to even qualify is $75,000 in repairs. So it's not for the average Joe, so to speak. It's to take some of our older buildings that have fallen into disrepair, that we don't spend tax dollars on to revitalize, or haven't spent tax dollars, and not likely to spend tax dollars, but it gives a private developer the opportunity to come in and invest some money, get somewhat of a tax break for a short period of time, and then leaves us with, hopefully, a revenue-generated property that enhances the quality and the beauty of the center of our town. Those of you that were able to participate in the Envision Kingston 2, and I guess that was about three and a half years ago, saw a vision, or maybe share my vision, of the center of town as a walking area, more commerce than we have right now, but in tune with the quality of life that we've generated in Kingston. We have spent thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars in the last 30, 40 years putting land into conservation, developing walking trails. We have a beautiful lake. We might someday want to have a Friends of Kingston Lake and capitalize on kayaking and boating and revenue that generates jobs here in town in a nice way, not necessarily commercially where machine shops or whatever, not to say that we don't like machine shops, we do. But that's for damn sure. Could be worse. That's developed nicely and fit in tune with our environment and in tune with the resources that we've invested in making our town as beautiful as it is. So I ask for your support on Article 79E.
Mr. Moderator, point of order, was this moved and seconded?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was.
Was that moved and seconded, Tammy?
So moved.
Anybody?
So I rise in support of this one also. Been here all my life, born and brought up in Kingston. I drive about 25,000 miles a year in my town truck every year. Most of that's in the town of Kingston. Over the years, one area in town that is, I think, losing its luster is actually the Plains, the center of town. And I think part of that reason is because you have all single-family homes, and a lot of them are huge homes that people can't do anything with. This would allow some of these to be maybe retrofitted into bed and breakfasts. It's not just for the big buildings, from what I understand. It also, if someone owns one of these big old colonials, could be retrofitted into bed and breakfast, so that, number one, the place would be kept up a lot better than they are. This I just see as a good thing for the future of the center of town, and I ask you to support it.
Thank you. Mr. Wilson?
I basically was going to introduce this, but this was on the ballot last year and was not recommended by the selectmen because it was brought to them at a very late date and they didn't have all the information. This year they support it unanimously.
Glenn?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. There you go. Very hard to follow, Ms. Alessio. The eloquence of the comments and the appropriateness of the comments can't be overstated. I just want to add that RSA 79E is enabling legislation that the state of New Hampshire has for communities that want to use this as a tool in their toolbox. And if someone chooses to apply to the selectmen for this relief, there's no guarantee that they will get it. It's completely at the selectmen's discretion with regard to whether or not the relief is granted and over how much time. There are very, very tough hurdles to cross when select board is considering an application for RSA 79E relief. Not the least of which is the fact that the proposed project has to have significant public benefit. And if you go in and read the RSA, you can see all the details on that. So it is not for an individual homeowner, as Ms. Alessio said, doing home improvements. It's something that would benefit the town as a whole to have that project done. And so it's a tool in the toolbox. It's a community development and economic development tool. It is also a recommendation in both our town master plan and the Envision Kingston process that was done back in 2016. Recommendations in, so I'm standing here in support of this article and hope that the town will agree with that. Thank you.
Debbie?
I just wanted to add to what's going to happen if this passes. We have a very committed Heritage Commission and Envision Kingston 2 subcommittee that will work with the selectmen to make sure that the town is protected. There's a lot of covenants that need to be signed. We'll work with the selectmen to make sure that there's a team of people who are educated and well-informed to make sure that the town gets the best benefit for this. Again, the reason behind this is there will be a public benefit for any of these property breaks that the owners get. Thank you.
Thank you. Kevin?
As is.
Anybody else? Virginia?
Virginia. In that 79E has been the foundation for a number of projects. My favorite renovation and the revitalization of the town of Newmarket. We didn't know if it was ever going to get done. Beautiful outcome they had, and those are the kinds of things we envision here. If you want more information, our website has some documentation that you can go and see and get some more information. It is not only for the Sanborn building. It could be a possibility for others, but certainly our biggest focus right now is the possibility of that purchase. I sat on the committee 3 times around saying, what will we do with that building? The New Hampshire Preservation Alliance every month comes out with pictures of buildings that are no longer used. Empty town halls, empty schools, empty churches, and they're all and I think the potential of this RSA means that we have a chance to bring back to life something as big as the seminary building or maybe some of the classic homes in Historic District 1. So it is a very important part of our revitalization process, and I certainly support it. And I agree with Glenn. I guess we can't thank the fire department enough for saving Ellie Alessio's life, because if we miss, when we
from Kingston. Am I permitted to ask a question or just a comment? Does the when the board amount of tax relief under 79E, does the public get to vote on that or have any input?
I would assume it works as we do with barn easements and things like that. There is a public hearing that takes place before the Board of Selectmen where the applicant presents their case, we listen to it, and there is a time for public comment at that time.
Thank you.
Anybody else on Article 19? Hearing none, we'll move the question of the ballot as written to the ballot. Thank you.
Article 19 moves on to the ballot as printed. Number 20, to see if the town will vote to require that the annual budget and all special warrant articles having a tax impact, as determined by the governing body, shall contain a notation stating the estimated tax impact of the article. Do I have a motion? Second. Thank you. Discussion on Article 20?
So this is...
Mr. Coombs.
You want to go?
Go ahead.
This was brought... They do have this information on there. So this is just allowing us to present that information that you get with the school board articles on the town articles. And that's why, so we want to give the voters as much information as possible so they can make an informed decision. That's the intent here.
Thank you, Mr. Coombs. Further discussion on Article 20? Mrs. Seer?
Mary Seer. I just want to speak in favor of this article. I think it's important that voters be informed about the implications. The implications of it's for consistency's sake as well. Again, as Mr. Coombs said, to be in conjunction with the ballot that voters see when they go into the booth. They have two separate sets of, two separate warrants, and one of them shows the tax impact and the other one doesn't. You know, if you notice on looking at the warrant for 2020, whoever brought these forward thought it was worthwhile to put the tax impact on there, both with and without using the infrastructure funds. I think that type of information is critical for voters to make an informed decision. So I support it.
Thank you, Mrs. Seer. Further comments? Yes, sir. Please state your name again.
Jim Sorrell.
Sorrell.
Just a question. Based on the wording, would you be required if a warrant had no tax impact to state that, as well as those that have a dollar impact?
I don't know for sure, but I would say probably.
I'm just reading the wording, it's not clear whether it's or not.
Correct. Thank you, sir. Further comments, questions? If not, Article 20 will move on to the ballot as printed. Number 21, to see if the town will vote to change the highway agent position from an elected to an appointed by selectman position, RSA 231-62, for a 3-year term, RSA 231-62B, with authority to perform additional duties on the direction of the selectman, RSA 231:63. A yes vote will go into effect at the next town meeting. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
And a second? Any discussion? Mr. St. Hilaire.
So, just so y'all, recommendation to the Board of Selectmen with my medical concerns and whatnot, and let's face it, I'm 62 years old. I'm not going to do this job forever. One way or other, I'm going out. I'm going to be leaving the job. Presently, to be an elected road agent for the town of Kingston, you've got 3 qualifications. You got to be a town resident. You got to be a registered voter the day you sign up for the job, and you got to pay the town clerk $1 to be on the ballot. Those are the only qualifications to do my job. Unlike the chief of police, he's got to be a certified cop to be, you know, chief of police and full-time certified and all those things. Same thing with the fire chief. Those 2 positions are appointed. This job right now is elected. Anyone can have the job. I've been doing it for 33, 34 years. The job has changed a lot, the requirements have changed a lot. This gives your Board of Selectmen a chance to bring people in from, worldwide, all over the country, all over the state, to do a job which is a lot more than it used to be. It's a lot more than filling potholes and cutting a few branches and putting up a few stop signs. Plus, the selectmen have illegally given me more jobs than they were supposed to, but we just pointed that out to them. I know. I support this. I think it's the right thing for the town of Kingston. I know some of you are going to get, some of you might think, well, it's taking my rights away to vote for the right person. Well, all right, if you had a good bunch of qualified people in town that actually want to work for the salary that I'm getting paid, they're going to sign up for the job and put an application in. I'm sure the Board of Selectmen are going to look at the fact that they're a Kingston resident is a plus, and they would probably pick that person anyways, but it gives the process, other than the first three things I told you, be a resident, be a voter, and pay $1. Those are the requirements. It's not good enough to do this job, I'm telling you. So you need to support this, give the selectmen a chance to hire my replacement.
Thank you, Mr. St. Hilaire. Further, Mr. St. James.
Just like to we feel it needs to be run by a qualified candidate. I'd also like to take a second and thank the highway workers for all they do in town. We talk about bring this to us because he cares about the job immensely. So this wouldn't take effect till his election ends, and then even then he would continue on just as a contract employee as long as he wanted. But that's the intent of it, is to have a qualified person here because it is the largest budget in the town. And we want to make sure it's run properly. So thank you, Rich, for bringing that to our attention.
Thank you, Mr. St. James. Further discussion on Article 21? If not, then Article 21 will be moved onto the ballot on March 10th as printed, and we'll move on to Article 22. See the town will vote 700, Article 701 of the town ordinances, rules and regulations to read as follows. 7011, the Select Board has the authority to appoint inspectors to check each building, structure, and waste disposal system being constructed or moved into the town of Kingston to determine that all existing ordinances and regulations are being followed. Inspectors shall include, but not be limited to, building, health, public, plumbing, electrical, and fire. 701.2, all construction shall conform to the regulations and restrictions as adopted under Article 301 of the Town of Kingston zoning and building codes, the current codes as adopted by the state of New Hampshire, and all other applicable town ordinances and regulations. And 701.3, the Select Board shall set fee schedules for such inspections, with said fees being due and payable prior to the issuance of permits. The fee schedule shall be available at the Select Board's office. Do I have a motion and a second and discussion? Mr. Coombs.
So, to you go 13 pages with some ordinances, some regulations thrown in there, and it's not very user-friendly. Because some are ordinances, because some are regulations, it's very convoluted how we can get everything in line. What this allows us to do is just basically, our end goal is to make a very user-friendly spreadsheet that explains what it costs, who you need to see, and what conditions that applies to. So this enables that to be more user-friendly for anyone who's doing renovation work or building in town, to do that.
Thank you. Further discussion on Article 22? Okay, if not, then Article 22 will proceed under the March 10th ballot as printed. Article 23, if Article 22 passes, to see if the town will vote to revoke Article 1002 of the town rules and regulations, as it would no longer be necessary. Do I have a motion? In a second? Somebody say second. Thank you. It's okay. It's okay. There being none, Article 23 will move on to the ballot as printed. Article 24, to see if the town will vote to amend Section 404 of the town ordinances to read as follows. No hawker or peddler who has been licensed by the state of New Hampshire pursuant to provisions of New Hampshire RSA 320:8 shall be allowed to do business in the town of Kingston without duly registering the state license with the Kingston Police Department and paying an annual license fee to the town of Kingston in the sum of $100. In addition, no hawker or peddler shall be allowed to conduct business in the town of Kingston other than between the hours of 9 a.m. and 5 p.m., Monday through Friday, inclusive, unless selectmen deem hours unreasonable. Any hawker or peddler who violates the provisions of this ordinance shall be fined a sum not to exceed $10 per day for each day of such violation, and a portion of the annual license fee may be waived in the sole discretion of the selectmen for hawkers and peddlers who are domiciled in the town of Kingston. Do I have a motion? In a second? Discussion in Article 24? Yes, Mrs. Bean.
Margaret Bean, I live in town. For 14 years, we ran the Renaissance Fair on our property. Some of the peddlers, they call themselves vendors, come in. Oh, they're called Rennies. They're great people. They live from fair to fair. They don't have 5 cents to scrape together, most of them. So I'm just saying, I don't know how the craft fairs do it, but tables at these fairs cost anywhere from $10 to $100, depending on your size and what you're selling. If the town starts adding on fees, these fairs aren't going to get anybody because they can't afford to come in. This is what these people do for a living. And if you start slapping on $100 fees or even $50 or $25 fees, they can't afford it. So we ran this fair for a long time, and I know these people, they're good people. It's now up in Fremont, so you guys don't have to worry about it now. But there are other fairs in town, and they do a good job. The last one that was here, they had great craftsmen. Great craftsmen. I'm a terrible customer. I walk by and say how beautiful it is and keep going. You know, and a lot of people do that. They don't make that much at a fair. So think about it.
Thank you, Mrs. B. Mrs. Bakey?
Hi, I'm Jenny Bakey. I'm the town clerk. Excuse my voice. That's not what this is. This has been a town ordinance forever, but it used to say that the people would pay the money to the town clerk when I don't have any discretion. It should be the chief that gets the money. It's not for a fair. It's for that person going door to door selling magazines. That's what this is for. So when the chief will know who is supposed to be out there, they have to register that license that they get from the state with the chief of police, not the town clerk.
Thank you, Mrs. Baker. Mrs. Mahoney?
Tammy Mahoney. I just would like to follow up on that question and ask, does this not apply to, say, Girl Scouts going around selling cookies, or you know, kids going around selling their, doing fundraisers?
Technically it would.
Okay. There's not a definition here of hawker and peddler, but maybe that's in the ordinance.
Okay, so we'll see if we can get that answer for you, Mrs. Mahoney. Mrs. Faulkner?
Again, just a little off, I figured I'd say it louder for you. This ordinance exists already. It doesn't change the fee, it doesn't add a fee, it doesn't change who has to apply for it. This already exists. The only thing that changes in this, instead of with the town clerk, and now it says with the Kingston Police Department. So if Girl Scouts never have to do it, this doesn't change that. It just changes town clerk to chief of police, period. And there's a definition in the state of what a hawker and a peddler is. So it's not like the town of Kingston is making up what a hawker and peddler is. That's by state definition.
Thank you, Mrs. Faulkner. Any other comments on Article 24? Okay, then we'll move that on to March 10 ballot as printed. Go to 25. On petition of 71 registered voters to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $10,000 to be placed in the Land Acquisition Capital Reserve Fund for the future purchase of development rights, conservation easements, and other land acquisition to conserve the town's rural character, provide open space for outdoor recreation by the public, and help stabilize the tax base. Do I have a motion? Mr. Wilson, second. Mr. Ernie.
Friends of Kingston Open Space.
Oh my God, this is getting bad.
Remember, Friends of Kingston Open Space, which actually sponsors this warrant article. This is a warrant article similar to ones that have been put in over the last 22 years. The reason Friends of Kingston Open Space is as the organization that proposes this warrant article is that it really is, we function not as a town committee because we're a private group, but the town relies upon Friends of Kingston Open Space to take whatever steps are necessary to try to obtain open space. We, in 1983, saw a major surge in development in the town and believed that that might wind up increasing the need for increased taxes because of education or public services. And so we initiated a warrant article to establish the Land Acquisition Capital Reserve Fund, and also another warrant article to put in $29,000 from that fund. A year after that, the town held what was called Envision Kingston, which was a community visioning activity to gain from the townsfolk what ideas they had about the future of Kingston and how they would like to see Kingston develop. And as a part of that, one of the major focuses that came up was the desire to have Kingston maintain its rural character. So there were a couple of outcomes on that, and the recommendations were to have the Friends of Kingston Open Space annually put in a warrant to try to have money for open space and to look for those parcels. In 2008, the master plan was updated, and that established a goal of 25% open space in the town of Kingston. And again, it talked about putting in an article for that purpose. Vision Kingston 2016 was the same thing. It was basically people wanted to maintain the rural nature of the town. So Friends of Kingston Open Space over the years has been doing this on an annual basis to meet the intent and sentiment of the town regarding open space. When we do this, we try to keep in mind that the town needs a variety of different land uses. We need industrial use, we need commercial uses, and so we stay away from commercial and industrial uses to make sure that we can maintain that balance within the town. We generally look for large tracts of developable land because that was the impetus in the beginning to try to lower taxes or to at least keep the tax base at a basic level. We also may look at parcels that are adjacent to major conserved properties right now, or that have significant environmental or ecological benefits to them. So we have a variety of things that we look at, but we stay away from those commercial and industrial properties and we provide some tax incentives for the town. Open space is really the least costly land use for a town, because once you acquire the property, there's virtually no expenditures for services or anything else. So it's a great proposition for keeping the tax base at low. Mr. St. Hilaire mentioned the whole aspect of why we set up capital reserve fund, so I won't get into that. But I will say that this capital reserve fund is a little different than the others. And we're always going to need fire trucks. We're always going to need trucks for the town, plows or whatever. But with this capital reserve fund, the goal is to actually phase it out. Once we hit the 25% mark as far as open space, there really won't be a need for this capital reserve fund. And so this is one that will disappear in time as opposed to the others, which continue on indefinitely. It's hard to predict the availability of land, but we continually talk with residents to see if they're interested in selling an easement or a land to the town. And we do that on a regular basis. When we set up the fund, we wanted to have it so that the individual voters could have a say in what properties the town acquired or what easements the town acquired. A lot of towns in the past have passed large bonds or large appropriations and then made the selectmen or others agents to expend it when somebody determined that they wanted to sell property to the town. In this case, we wanted to make sure that the voters had a chance to weigh in on any particular property that that the town is looking at. And so that was the way this warrant article was. The current balance is about $450,000 in that reserve fund. We would need substantially more than that to get to the goal of 25%, although we're at about 21% right now. And so the goal is foreseeable. And at some point, as I said, this warrant article will, this fund will disappear for us. And that's pretty much the history behind it. And I would appreciate you voting favorably on this at the election.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other comments on Article 25? If not, Article 25 will proceed on the ballot March 10th as printed. 26. I'm going to, if the original article with the petitioner's signatures is slightly different than what is printed before you. That was kind of lifted right out of last year's warrant. It does not change the intent. I'll be happy to read what is on here now and what I'm going to bring it up at. Let me read what's there now. On petition of the Kingston Heritage Commission and 44 registered voters to see if the town will vote to raise an appropriate sum of $10,000 to be placed in the previously established Heritage Fund to support preservation. Okay, I got the two of them. To support preservation and utilization of historic and cultural resources in the town of Kingston. That is the correct way as it appeared on the petition. The old one read, vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $10,000 replacing the previously established Heritage Fund for future enhancements to support preservation and utilization of the town's historic properties. So petition warrant article for 2020 is the one before you. I think it is, right? Did I get it right, Debbie? I didn't reverse it around, okay. So if there's no objection, I'll ask for a motion on the revised Article 26. In a second, and discussion. Mrs. Powers?
First off, I'd like to apologize to the Budget Committee and the Board of Selectmen that I was not at the original hearing to discuss this. And also thank you, Madam Moderator, for changing the wording to the correctness. The Heritage Fund has $18,595 in its balance, and this was raised through the town's warrant appropriations, private gifts, and a Heritage Commission fundraising event. The monies have been used in this fund this past year. About $4,300 have been used for a two-phase project, which was a archaeological dig at as we know it as the Recreation Department. The reason that we hurried this along and did this and had the available funds is because of the Heritage Fund. The reason that we hurried it along The Recreation Department wanted to do some improvements on the recreation property, the town's property, which involved disturbing the soil. It came to the Heritage Commission's attention that there was a study done, when the road work was done on 125, that identified that site as a pre-contact and Native American site. So we went to the New Hampshire Division of Historical Resources, asked them about this. They said, yes, we've done site evaluation, that is a high probability that there's something there. So before the Recreation Department and the town dug up, we had test pits done and an archaeological survey done. Unfortunately, in some senses, there was nothing of significance found there, so the recreation project could go on. The benefit that we see that came out of this is, one, we know for sure, and two, this is again support that the Kingston is interested in its historic properties. So we will use that as a leverage in the future grants that we write. This fund is going to be more and more important as we move ahead. We do know that we have the potential of a seminary property, and I'm going to use that for an example of what these funds monies could be used for. The school is going to may do a negotiation on the seminary property. They are not interested in owning an easement, a preservation easement on that. The town of Kingston probably should be. Because although we believe that Chinburg Properties, if this is selected, please don't take me as saying that this is happening. If this is voted in and the negotiations work out with Chinburg Properties, part of it will be, we'll want in the future that Chinburg Properties can't just sell that to anybody, that there'll be some protection for the town, that at least the exterior building will stay in the correct format. That's one example. Another example is we have several old buildings, right in this complex here, the old firehouse, the tram house, the great daily barn, and the college shop. Now, these things are town buildings. We do expect the town to maintain these buildings to some extent, but there's also additional things that we might want that may be above and beyond what the town feels is maintenance of a building. The last thing that I also want to bring up as an example is currently this year, the Heritage Commission is going for a certified local government grant to get a consultant, 100% funded grant, to get a consultant to put the Plains Cemetery on the National Registry. That is an example of what the Heritage Commission is doing. At that point, we believe that with that additional support on the registry, that there'll be grants available out there to help work on the cemetery, including working on the gravestones. Currently, the town funds prepare gravestones. We could get 50% grants. This money, the grant, is something that I can't say in November, December, when we're planning our budget, that I need to $5,000, $10,000, whatever, for a grant. Because the grant process, we might not get it the first year. We might get it the second year. So again, we're trying to, as discussed before, stabilize the base. I really could go on, but I won't. But I would ask at the deliberative and before the Budget Committee and the Board of Selectmen close their meetings, that they would reconsider their vote on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Powers. Further discussion in Article 26, Mrs. Morse. And I'm going to she got there faster, Virginia, that's all. Come on, Mary.
I just noted that this particular article before Ms. Powers gave the presentation was not recommended by both the Selectmen and the Budget Committee, and I wondered if somebody from either one of those bodies would like to speak to why they did not support it.
We'll see if we can get that information and let Mrs. Morse come up.
Virginia Morse, Historic District Commission. For years, we've seen the value of having these funds to keep our fire apparatus up to date, for example. We put the money away a little bit each year, and then when we're ready for a new fire truck, we have the funds. Ernie just spoke about the value of preserving open space. We put the money away, and in this case, there's not a specific piece of property that we're going to buy, but we're putting our trust in that focus group and those that work to keep open space, preserve the open space. This is an opportunity to preserve our cultural resources. It gives Debbie and the members of the Heritage Commission the potential to reach out for grant money to do it on the spot. And even though we don't have a specific project that we're going to put this money towards, it's the same idea. The Heritage Fund the Heritage Foundation is actually quite young in this town compared to the other funds that we've done. But I think this is a very valuable fund so that we can make the most of grants, that we can make the most of our cultural resources, just as we do other infrastructure things. And so I would recommend this be passed by the voters, and I also would recommend that both the Budget Committee and the Board of Selectmen rethink their position. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Morris. Mrs. Faulkner?
Of the town, you have to be able to show the granting authorities where any matching funds are located. It's kind of short-sighted, especially since all the talk we've had today about preserving the historic district, the things that may have to occur, all the different buildings that are being discussed, to think that we don't need to have some funds someplace in case the Heritage Commission needs to be able to access a grant. So I just would support this article. I would support the Budget Committee rethinking the vote on it, because again, it's a capital reserve fund. You're putting money away for your future.
Thank you, Mrs. Faulkner. Mr. Coombs?
So I won't speak for the rest of the board, but I did vote against this because we did have a 6% increase in the budget this year, and we have to say no to some things. I completely respect the passion of the Heritage Commission and what they want to do, but you know, again, our taxes always go up, and some years there's a lot of asks this year, and we can't just say yes to everything. So sometimes things do not get recommended, and that's why I voted to not recommend this.
Thank you. Okay, one more, Mrs. Powers. I voted for it, 7 against it.
I did forget to add that it is the Heritage Commission and the Board of Selectmen that have to agree to expend funds.
Okay, thank you. Any more comments on Article 26, Mr. Wilson?
I'm the one. I think when you've got a budget that's over $6 million, that 10,000 is not going to amount to much. In fact, I think it's less than 20 cents on the dollar. So it's not a big impact, and it's the only thing that town department they got to know.
Thank you. Further comments on Article 26? Yes, Mr. Murray?
Yes, the question for the selectmen and the budget committee to speak to why they voted no. I'm not sure if I'm accurate on this, but I believe that you were to show up and no one showed up when we were going to vote on this or when it was to be presented. And I think that's why we ended up mostly voting no, is what ended up happening. And not because people don't want to have a heritage fund, and I think you spoke well to it today, but I think that's what happened was people were unsure on the budget committee as well as where's this money going to? Nobody ever did show up to the budget committee, I think, to speak to it.
Okay, thank you. I'm not sure that's accurate, but Ernie? You know, for the life of me, I couldn't tell you what your last name is right now. I'm definitely having a senior moment. It's Ernie Landry.
Hearing. There were questions on this at the budget committee, and so I'm not sure where the confusion is on that, but just want to share.
Right, Mrs. Powers wasn't here, but Mr. Landry definitely was. Okay. But there's an opportunity later after this one, after the deliberative session adjourns for other decisions to be made. Any more comments on Article 26 as printed? If not, that'll move forward onto the ballot on March 10th, and so Article 27, on petition of 31 registered voters to see the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $3,100 to support One Sky Community Services in their efforts to provide vital support and services to 31 individuals with developmental and intellectual disabilities who reside in the town of Kingston in the town's 2020 budget. Do I have a motion? In a second? Okay, discussion on Article 27. Okay, there being none. Mrs. Fiddler?
I got in contact with Sky One and left 2 messages to tell them that it would not be included in the budget if they didn't come and speak for it. Nobody called me back.
Thank you. Okay, then if there be none, to 27, that will move on to the ballot on March 10 as printed. We have a couple of announcements. One, there's a candidate, Mrs. Faulkner, I have 2 announcements. Go ahead. Why did you 7 o'clock, thank you. Mrs. Faulkner.
I apologize. I was out of the room when SoRock was discussed and asked me to make some more warrants.
That's already been voted on.
But it's my understanding that somebody had said something about reconsidering it. Chuck, did you ask something about reconsideration on that one, on that vote?
No.
Consideration for a quick comment, if I may.
Which one?
For the Article 28.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Move. And second. Aye. Opposed, say no. No. The ayes have it. Okay.
And I do want you to know that because I thought it was going to be up for reconsideration, I did run out to the parking lot to get the woman who had spoken on SoRock so she would be present for any discussion for reconsideration. My comment is that I don't know why 6,333 was recommended as per capita, is that compared to all the other social service agencies and the requests and how much the town funds them, that seems a little on the high side, since most of them are between 1,000 and 3,000, other than Vic Gary and Rockingham Community Action, which I'm well aware of how much money that they town. I was unaware of this program and this particular agency, and I just wondered, I wanted to ask what that was, because I would, unless I hear differently, I would make a recommendation for 3,000 for that department. I'm not saying not to fund them, but unless they've given some sort of unusual reason why we would fund them more than other social service agencies.
Let's see if we could find an answer to that. Anyone have any other comments? Then if you choose to make an amendment to that article, now would be the time?
And we'll see what people think, but I'd like to amend that number down to 3,000 to be in line with the other social service agencies.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, discussion on the amendment?
I'm giving you my discussion, so.
Okay.
Why are we asking about it?
Sure. And so this is the same.
All our communities. We just wanted a fair way to come up with an across-the-board ask for everybody. So we have asked based on population for other towns. Some towns are closer to 9,000.
Okay, thank you. All right, any other comments on the amendment to this article? St. James.
This is the first time. You do great work over there. My concern is the dollar amount. When you compare to any other social service agencies that we pay, this is more than Meals on Wheels, Community Action, a staff. people to consider, start at 3,000, see where it goes from there. But that's why I seconded that motion.
Thank you. Further discussion on the amendment? And I assume you're ready for the vote. All in favor of amending Article 28 to the sum of $3,000, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. No. The ayes have it. The article has been amended to $3,000. Further discussion on Article 28 as amended? And there being none, Article 28 will proceed to the ballot as amended on March 10th. The only other thing I had, this is Mark Heitz's last deliberative session as our selectman. He's done yeoman's job representing our town, keeping our tax dollars down, even though we don't always agree with why he's doing some of those things, but he's given 110% to the town of Kingston. And I ask that you rise and give him a round of applause.
Thank you. I hope some. One announcement I would like to make is this is Ellie. I think she's been doing it. She's running for another position in town, which I wish her luck, and on behalf of the Board of Selectmen, with this bouquet.
Not a deliberative session like this here, and I was the first woman, and I was pretty excited about that too, so I guess I'm going to be followed by another woman, which is even better. But I also wanted to run for the Board of Selectmen, and Mark has been my hero. I think he's done a fabulous job for us, and I wanted to continue his good work and give those guys a hard time. But it's been my pleasure. I've enjoyed being moderator. I've learned so much, and certainly a lot about the government in New Hampshire and the town, and I'll be there hopefully anyways at elections, but elections on March 10th will be my last presiding as your moderator. And I thank you for your continued support for the last 35 years. Thanks.